guys, welcome to my little paintbrush. My name is Miss Cami and today we get to paint BB-8 together. Love this painting. It's a super simple palette and a fun tribute to one of my favorite characters. So let's dive right in, okay? Grab yourself a nice flat brush. Mine might be a little bit bigger than yours because the space I need to cover is bigger than the one that you most likely have at home. So if you're thinking your flat is a little bit smaller than this, don't worry, that'll work just fine, but I'm gonna go ahead and use my big one, all right? Let's make sure we get it nice and wet in our water. We wanna loosen our bristles and also our paint because acrylic paint gets thirsty. So we're gonna start with our black background. I'm gonna go ahead and load generously on my nice big flat brush, because we just want to almost scoop up that paint and go right onto our canvas. And I like to work away from my main subject matter before I get it close to it. This helps me just go a little bit more quickly, and then I slow down my strokes as I get nice and close to BB-8. But right now I can just really put that paint on my surface. And this is a great time to wrap your canvas, okay? So if you are painting on a canvas, go ahead and wrap those edges. But again, I'm just getting that paint on there, brushing back and forth. Because it's this nice black paint, we don't really need to worry so much about the direction of our brush strokes. We don't see any of that. It's a nice flat black background, sorry. All right, so as we start to get closer to BB-8, I'm just gonna pay a little bit more attention to the speed of my brush strokes. I don't wanna get into it too much with that black because BB-8 is mostly white, and so it would be really tricky to cover that up if I got too far into him with black paint. As I come up on my edges, I slow my stroke down, and I'm gonna really utilize the shape of my brush to get into any edges and little corners like that. Again, make sure you are constantly putting water on your brush. It's really important. Otherwise, you're gonna see a bunch of little pockets coming through on your canvas, and it's gonna be super frustrating. So make sure you are using that water. And again, slowing down as we round BB-8's head, I guess. That would be his head, right? I mean, this is, you guys know your Star Wars better than me, I'm sure, but I'm gonna call it his head. And we're gonna come around here nice and gently. You can flip your canvas if you would like. Otherwise, you have to get these kind of strange angles to get in there, but however is easiest for you, go ahead and try and get the cleanest brush stroke as you can, because we're not coming back to this. This is the only time we're gonna butt up against BB-8, so we're trying to press our brush and get all of that paint, push it all the way to our bristles as we come around with the most steady hand that we possibly can, which is really tricky when you're doing circles, but we're just going to do the best that we can and remembering to be kind to ourselves, right? Gotta remember that rule that we're all gonna have a different result when we paint, and it's okay because we are all learning. And this isn't a print, this is hand painted, so it's most likely gonna look that way, okay? So now we've got our background in, super quick there. Now I'm gonna go ahead and make some gray, all right? I want a nice light charcoaly color, so I don't even need to wash my brush. I'm gonna go right into my gray or my white paint, and I'm gonna make gray. You can see I'm pressing the black off of my brush. Might have to add some more. I'm gonna get this nice charcoal color. I wanna make enough for everything on my painting that needs that color. It's okay if you can see kind of the marbling within the paint. It's okay if it's not mixed 100%, then it kind of offloads really nicely onto your canvas. So don't worry too much about that, okay? Now let's go ahead and start with this circle right here. We're just gonna, again, pressing our bristles. You can see I press on my brush, and then those bristles flare out, and that helps me get that circle. I need to add some water to my brush. So again, if you press, it'll send those bristles off to the edges of your brush. Got a little too much there. And then it'll help you get nice, clean edges. Okay, all the way around. Now this is the only part of my painting inside BB-8 that I can do with this big flat. So I'm gonna wash it off. I'm gonna switch to a smaller one, which again may be the one that you've been using the whole time, and that's great. But I'm gonna go ahead and wash that big flat. And now I'm going to move to still a flat brush, just a smaller size, and get it wet. And we're gonna come up to what I just refer to as BB-8's headband, because I can relate to headbands, so I'm just gonna call it that. And it's that band right at the top of his head, and we're just going to paint gently in that little line that's there for us. And my flat brush is just about the perfect width for that. I can almost do it in just one stroke. So you'll want to find a brush that fits right there, and then you'll want to just nice and clean up against that edge there. Okay, so just nice and easy, filling in, like I said, what I refer to as the headband. Okay, so let's go into some of the little details. We've got some gray that's going to go in these shapes right here. So I'm just going to stick with my brush and my gray paint, and I'm going to start to put in these shapes here. And just kind of following my lines, or maybe you are one of those artists that's just super confident and you're just gonna freehand that. I say go for it. Sometimes I'm feeling confident myself and just decide to freehand stuff. That's awesome. So now I'm gonna go into this little half circle shape. This looks like a smile. I'm gonna go ahead and paint that in. Again, if you are painting on a canvas, I would encourage you to wrap it, go around those edges, okay? Now I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna switch to the toe of my brush to really get a clean line right there on this little triangle shape. Of course, if you're feeling a little bit nervous with this flat brush in all these shapes, there's no rule that says you have to stick with this brush. If you feel more confident using a round brush or just a smaller flat and you have that on hand, then just go for it. Usually if we're new to painting, we prefer smaller brushes, and that's totally normal, so don't feel strange about needing a smaller brush. Now this little thin stripe right here is also gray, so I'm really going to focus on the toe of my brush to get that in. And again, if I need to, or if you need to switch to a smaller brush, go ahead and do that, but sometimes it's fun to play around with what the brushes that you have, what strokes they can give you, and what widths of strokes they can offer. So if you want to just give it a try, just switch it to the toe and fill that in using the toe of your brush. It's good practice. We're going to butt right up against this edge right here and do the same here. Kind of clean that up a little bit. There we go. We've got one more spot, and that's that smaller circle. So I'm I'm going to go ahead and come in here with this flat and just press it. You can see I can almost get my full circle. I like to see how much of it I can go. The more you can stay on your canvas, the better the circle will be. So try and plant that brush and not move it if you can. All right, let's wash that out really, really good. Just giving it a really good rinse. You can hear me just swishing that water. You've got to really work those bristles. All right, so let's move on to our orange details, okay? Here's my nice bright orange. I want to add a little bit of white to it, and I want to kind of tone down that super bright orange just a little bit. Not a ton, but just a bit. Let's tone it down a little bit. That'll also help with coverage. And let's move in to the sections that are orange. So let's start right here with this nice big section right here. And let's just carefully follow those lines. Again, anytime you want to get a nice clean stroke, press your bristles. Press them out just like that, okay? So I'm pressing. If you can't get this much painting done on your canvas with the strokes that I've got going on here, you probably need some water. So if you feel like, man, I gotta go back to my palette over and over and over again, it's probably because your paint is just seizing up on you. And just a hint, as the weather changes and as it gets warmer outside, your paint will actually seize up a lot quicker. So if you're in a warm room or it's a nice warm day and you're painting, you're probably going to notice that your paint is getting really thick and dried out really fast. And it just needs water. All right, so there's that little part. Let's move on to this one. And you can probably see that I use the same rule of thumb as I did on my background. I work on the away from my edges and then I move close. So I can kind of brush in pretty quickly, and then as I get to the edges, I'm forced to slow down that stroke a little bit, but I'm able to fill in a lot of it pretty quickly before I have to slow down. Get some water on my brush. I just constantly load with water and just incorporate that water into my paint. Then we'll slow down a little bit and we'll get nice clean lines. We really want to try and focus on getting clean lines with our BB-8 here. Nice and clean edges. And a lot of it is just practice on how to use your brush. We just learn as we go, and as we paint more and more, how to get those nice flat clean edges. But you can see once you get the hang of it, it goes in pretty quickly. And again, if you're wrapping your canvas, remember to take this orange around. We're just going to do this little line right here. Come down. Smoothing any lumps out. We are going to outline this, so if you've got some of that left in there, don't worry too much about it. Okay, now we're going to come up here. And again, these little sections are just about the width of my brush, no more than the width of my brush. And so I can kind of do these in one simple brush stroke. And again, we're going to come back with some lines, outlining some of this. So we'll clean it up really well when we get to that point. Right now, we're just trying to get it in. Okay. Now we've got our little orange squares here. We'll just call them orange squares. I can't wait to get all the messages about what all these are actually called. You guys are awesome that way and know your Star Wars. But when I'm painting or creating anything, I really just refer to shapes. It just helps me understand the direction of my brush stroke and all that fun stuff. So I'm kind of getting overwhelmed now with the size of the space I'm trying to fill. So I'm gonna switch real quick, and I'm just gonna go to a smaller flat, or you can get a smaller round if you have it. And I'm gonna switch to that to finish out my little squares. Because I'm just having a hard time with that bigger brush to get into these shapes. So if you've got, you can even switch to a detail brush for this, and that'll help you get those in a little bit better. Again, we're going to clean up these areas with a detail brush, so just get the main paint, the main orange in there, and then we'll come back to it. So just getting it in there. Trying to follow our little squares here. Using the toe when we need and the flat when we need. Toe is for smaller spaces. Flat will give us bigger. All right, now it's time for some fun stuff. So I'm gonna just make sure that orange is washed out of my flat brush. Okay, and I'm going to go back to that gray, load it with some gray, not too much. Okay, and then I'm gonna kind of go into this black, and I'm gonna just give the edge of my brush a little bit of black paint. And I'm gonna come back up to my headband, and I'm going to start to put in, I may have gotten a little too much black on that one, so kind of go back and reload. I'm going to start to put in a nice sort of faded black shadow up here. I'm just going to go along the top of my headband there, just like that, okay? And now I'm going to do the same thing in this circle. I'm going to take that edge and I'm going to follow the circle around. Okay, and I might need to water down my paint. Anytime it's not flowing very well for you, go and water it down a little bit, thin it out. And I'll just go around this guy, shadow all the way around. Just like that. Just kind of blend it all in the middle there. So it's got that nice edge around it. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm just going to follow this with that nice black edge. This is, I mean, you're basically outlining. However, when you do it this way, you get a nice blended look, and it's actually a lot easier to make those lines opposed to having a round brush. You just get a little bit shakier. So do this little smiley face shape right here. You can see it just gets that right off there for me. And then I'll come over here and I'll do these gray shapes on this side, making sure that that black edge is always favoring the outer edge of my painting. Got a little black out there. Just clean that up. Awesome. All right, let's give that brush another good wash. And we're gonna want to actually dry it too, because we're gonna do some fun dry brushing. So I'm gonna really just take a minute to scrub as much of that water out, just pressing as much as I can out of there. Okay, and now I just wanna kind of separate my bristles. See, I'm kind of pressing the water out. Now I'm gonna load with some white paint, and I'm just going to scuff up BB-8 because he's been on lots of these missions and he's not all clean and shiny, right? So I'm gonna take that white and I'm just going to brush in. You can see just brushing in lightly. I always say this is kind of like feathering. We're just brushing in, and it starts to look like he's a little scuffed up here. Okay, so just brush it in, and anytime you're like, oh, that didn't go well, you can go back with the orange, go over it a little bit, maybe even darken that area, and then you can wipe off your brush, go right back to the white, and reapply just kind of those nice scuffy marks, okay? So we're gonna just keep doing that. We're gonna go over to the next one. The trick to this is very little paint and light pressure. Okay, so just scuff up BB-8 over here, and you know, just brush it in super light. And let's put some on our brush and come up here to this section up here. Do a little bit right there. We're just gonna do these little scuffs all over our BB-8. And you can do it all with this brush, just nice and gently in there. Okay, and now we're gonna make sure that we don't have any orange on our brush and go into the white. And now we're gonna do the same thing on all of our gray. So scuff up all of this gray. See that? We're just pressing very, very lightly. Okay, getting all of our scuff marks on there, just like that. We will come over to this section and just lightly, you can see, just lightly across that, scuff that up, and then up here we'll get a nice scuff mark right in the middle there. Okay, nice and bright. I got a little bit of black on my brush there, so there, just like that. Okay, let's load with that gray. I'm not even gonna wash my brush. I'm just gonna load in that gray paint. And then I'm gonna go in for some of that white, and I'm gonna make sure I've got a nice light reflection happening on this circle here. Just not right up against the edge, just putting that little reflection in. And I'll do the same thing on this little guy down here. Just give it a little spin, just like that. Okay, how we doing? Now we've got this bright white BB-8, and we gotta get him all scuffy all over. So we want to make a really light gray. Be careful not to go too dark. I find that that's the biggest mistake when we're painting BB-8, is you go too dark and then it doesn't have the same result. So with that really light gray, I'm gonna start to brush in, and it's just very lightly. I'm gonna start to scuff up our BB-8. You can see it just looks like he's just a little bit dirty from the dust and everything he's been experiencing. So I'm just really lightly just brushing that in, okay? Trying to keep my brush fairly dry when I do this. Not too much paint on it, and definitely not too much water. And see, we're just gonna go in all the little areas of BB-8 and just make sure he doesn't look too shiny and too put together here. Okay, so let's go up, and we're gonna go up in that forehead area, and then right underneath what I called my headband earlier, and under here. Okay, just anywhere that you're thinking, man, BB-8 needs to be a little bit scuffy there. We'll just make sure we definitely get some around here, almost making a shadow in that little half circle motion there. Kind of making sure that we're indicating that this is probably a little bit darker right there, and then a little bit right there as well. And then we'll just kind of brush some in between these guys. Okay, so just scuffing that BB-8 up. And now let's focus on this area right here. Gonna put some of that darker gray back on our brush. And we would just want to very gently brush in some of that darker gray towards the center, but not fully across. See that? Just bringing it towards the middle to make sure we get that illusion that there's that crease happening right there. If you get too much on your brush, you're going to notice right away that your stroke isn't breaking like it should. And you really want that. You want your stroke, when I say break, you want it to kind of let paint off, pull paint off as it gets towards the center there. And then with that lighter gray, we'll just brush in the center here. So it's darker towards the edges, lighter in the center. Okay, good job, you guys. We are on the home stretch here. Okay. All right, so we've got them all scuffed up. Now let's wash our brushes out. I've got 2 in my water, so I gotta make sure I wash them, right? We gotta always clean our brushes. We don't want them to sit in our water for too long. Okay, now we've got a lot of lines to do and some details, so I want you to take a deep breath, grab a detail brush, and remember the trick to little lines is to make sure your paint is nice and thin, okay? So I've got myself a detail brush here. I'm gonna get it in my water, and I'm gonna just really generously thin out my paint. I just really want to focus on my paint being as thin as I can get it without causing drips on my canvas. And I'm gonna spin my brush, okay, so that I've got a nice point on there. All right, and now let's start going around some of our details of our BB-8. So I'm gonna start up here at the top. And I'm just going to go around. And the great thing about this is if I go into my background, it's black. So I can kind of take a deep breath and not worry too much about that. So let's now go down here. Same thing, I'm gonna try my best to just do this in one stroke. Now, if you're not able to, that's an indication to you that your paint is not thin enough. So if you can't do this in one stroke, stop, thin out your paint, okay? Let's go to this orange section here, all the way across. Load my brush, all the way across. Then I'll come down here and I'll clean up. You can see those edges just clean up right away. I love that. It's often why I will outline is I can really clean up edges. And I'm a very clean painter, so that works for me. All right, now we're gonna go over, we gotta go around this guy right here, which is tricky. It's always tricky to do circles. Just do the best that you can. Trying to stay connected to your canvas as long as you can without pulling off of your canvas, okay? So let's go up and down around these guys here. Okay, we're gonna go around each of them. Again, cleaning up our edges. And you can see I did all of those without having to load my brush. So that's really important, okay? Gotta pay attention to that. If you're having to load your brush too much, that is an indication that you need to thin out your paint. Okay, so we've got to go across this long guy right here. So I'm just gonna start in the center to take the pressure off myself and just do my best here. Going all the way across there. Load my brush, and then I can come back and I can meet that spot again. Just like so. Okay, just keep going. And do the bottom here all the way across as much as we can without lifting our brush. Okay, just remember to breathe. Sometimes we forget to breathe. All right, I'm gonna just keep moving on here, cleaning up our edges, outlining our little details. Every step in a painting makes a difference. So even if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to do that, that sounds too hard, take a minute and take your time because it'll be worth it in the end. Just again, do as much of that as you can. We're going to go all the way around all of this here, just like that. Okay, and then let's come down this guy all the way. If you need to pick your brush up, that's okay. Don't feel like you're a bad artist if you have to come up for a break. But it's good practice to do as much as you can without lifting your brush. Okay. And then we'll go around here. How we doing, you guys? This is great practice. Great line work practice. Always get a deep, frustrating sigh when I teach lines in the studio because it's definitely not the funnest part of a painting, but as soon as you master the pressure of a brush and a good line, you've got some pretty awesome skills that you can pull out of your pocket again and again and again. All right, so now we've outlined everything that's already on our canvas. BB-8's looking awesome. What we need to do now is add some things that are going to be completely freehand. So take a deep breath and just follow my lead, okay? Right here on this edge, we've got another square coming off of the canvas, just like that, okay? Think about these shapes with me, and if you're always thinking shapes, you're going to be able to handle this, okay? Now, right over here, just kind of where this circle starts to end, we're going to draw, or paint rather, a line down, okay? Probably a little further up. And then we're going to do a smiley face that curves around this circle, okay? So just think of a smiley face. That's the shape that we've got here. And this is going to go all the way up just over this second circle. And when we get right up there, we're going to go across the top of it here, curve down and meet that square right there, okay? Oh, I know that was intimidating. Okay, let's do another one. We're going to come right up here, go straight across, and then come down right in there. You can see these are really helping BB-8, right? Let's go ahead while we're right here and make sure this circle's nice and clean. Adding that black, didn't do that before, so let's add it, makes a difference. Okay. Now we've got another line that comes from the edge of our canvas and it just tilts in and meets that one right there. So I'm telling you, the most intimidating lines are done, so you can relax a little bit. We've got another half square kind of coming off canvas right there. And our last kind of rectangular shape comes right here, and we're just going to come out and then back around. Okay, now we have to do a few circles. Okay, so again, deep breath. We're going to do these circles in just one swoop. Okay, we've got 1, 2, Remember, they don't all have to be the same and they don't all have to be perfect. Okay, we've got one right here. And then we've got a couple down here. Let's go 1. And if you have to break it up into half-C's and half-C's, you can. You can kind of go 1 and then 2, just like that. Okay, and we've got one more right here. 1, 2. Told you guys you can do this. Okay, let's go up here and let's get that antenna in. So without washing my brush, I'm just gonna add some white and make a nice gray. Okay, and we've got 2. We've got a little short one and then we've got a taller one. So the short one is center on top of this head here. So we're just gonna go straight down to the center as best we can. And when I say straight, I mean kind of on a slant because he's kind of leaning, right? And then we've got our other one and it's off to the right and it's a little taller. So we'll go down. This is the same detail brush I was using, so you can see if you just add a little more pressure to it, it becomes a little bit bigger line. All right, awesome. Anywhere you want to add any additional scuffy marks, I think I want to just lighten this up right here a little bit, so I'm just going to use my detail brush and some light gray and just lighten that area up a little bit. I'm going to flip my detail brush over, dip it in my paint, make kind of a stamp. I come up here and I'm gonna give myself a nice circle right there, a nice highlight. And I'm gonna do a smaller one just underneath it, swiveling my brush a little bit to get a nice circle. And then right here on this little guy, we're gonna do one too. Oh. Again, you can kind of swirl it out a little bit. Guys, BB-8 is finished and looks awesome. Now all we have to do is put in our stars, and those are gonna go in really quickly. We're just gonna grab any size brush we want. I think I'll go for my biggest one, and same thing. You just use the bottom of your brush, and remember, stars kind of cluster together. So you can kind of cluster some. If your stars get a little wonky, remember, it's just the amount of paint on the bottom of your brush, okay? And more paint and more pressure is going to give you a bigger dot. Less paint and less pressure will give you a smaller one. So you just want to go around here and just start putting in all of those fun stars, okay? I might switch my brush a little bit. The bottom of that one was kind of giving me problems. Sometimes our paint gets a little dry on us here too, and we've got to loosen it up or add more. So just gonna keep going. All over our canvas, just like that, okay? So keep just putting all of your stars in. You can see you just can get kind of quick about it. And cluster the ones that you want clustered together. Putting them all around our BB-8. Kind of have fun with it, play with it a little bit. Getting all of those in. Sometimes I like to even splatter. If you're feeling brave, you can splatter the stars. I kind of like the look though of these bigger, kind of more controlled stars in this particular piece, but to each his own, right? All right, guys, I think that we are just about ready to sign our painting. Looks pretty awesome, you guys. Let's go ahead and move back to our detail brush. I'm gonna put some white on it. Before I sign, I'll just make sure I've got a little bit of light up here coming down those antennas. Okay, and then I'll choose any color on my palette that I want to, and I'll go ahead and I'll sign my name. Signing is important. It shows the world that we're proud of our art and happy with the result, which we all should be. Make sure you wash your brush. Let your painting dry and then display it for everybody to see. I hope you love your painting. Thank you so much for painting with me, and I hope to see you back at the easel soon. Bye-bye.